The nakedness of the ape. When Adam and Eve woke up after eating the forbidden fruit, the first thing that their consciousness realized is that they were naked. They looked at themselves and there was a sense of shame inside them. So they did what every other human in our society would do when put in front of a large audience naked, except an exhibitionist, of course. They covered their genitals and hid behind the bushes in different places, far from each other. It is not the fact that they were actually being judged by the other person. It's not the fact that Eve was judging Adam or Adam was judging Eve, but they themselves were judging themselves. And when, excuse me, and when God came in the evening inside the Garden of Paradise, the Eden Garden, he wanted to take a stroll with his favorite creature, Adam. He couldn't find him, so he called out, "Where are you, Adam?" Apparently forgetting that he can see everything. And Adam gave a noise behind the bushes. He said, "I'm right here, God, but I don't want to come in front of you because I feel naked." And God exclaimed, "Naked? Who taught you that word? Did you eat something bad?" That was the moment when the first man and the first woman did something horrible in the eyes of God. But why did chaos manifest itself in the Eden Garden? Why? Now, the most simple answer we can derive is from the Taoist principle of yin and yang. Well, the yin, they are a Chinese philosophical concept. They are represented by the famous white and black coil shape. I do not know what that shape is exactly called. Yin is associated with darkness, chaos, and yang is associated with order. What what most people miss is that inside yin there is a dot of yang, and inside the yang there is a dot of yin, which tells us that no matter how much we try to enclose the space and prevent the opposite to get inside it, no matter how many boundaries, how thick wall of a boundary we build around the order, we cannot stop chaos from building itself inside the orderly kingdom. And wherever there is chaos, there is a small bit of order. The Eden Garden was created by God. And how could God intentionally let Satan disguise himself and run around in Eden Garden freely and lead to the consequence of his favorite beings being devoured by the deceitful nature of the devil? It was just because inside his orderly sacred space there was definitely a hint of chaos involved, because that is the rule of the universe. You cannot enclose a space with either chaos or order. One cannot coexist without the other. One cannot be independent of the other. Adam and Eve both came in front of God looking untidy, wrapping themselves with leaves and lawns. They looked unkept. They had a sense of shame in their face. That is in fact written in the Genesis. But why were they ashamed? Why is it that we feel ashamed for ourselves? Why do we have the insecurities that we do? That is because we know strength, we know beauty, and we know that powerful abhors the weak, powerful shames the weak. Beauty shames ugly, the more shames the less, and the ideal shames all. So, how could Adam and Eve, who had now become aware of their insufficiencies and unsymmetries, would ever be able to look into the eyes of God without shame? How could they ever stand in front of the ideal without feeling a sense of seamlessness towards themselves. Adam became frustrated. How utterly pathetic he became. He pointed at Eve and said, "She's the one who told me to eat the fruit." And then he pointed at God. "Why did you ever put the tree of death, the forbidden tree, inside the garden?" Isn't it such a relatable thing that happens in the world nowadays? And even what has happened in the world since the ancient times? The man, when denied by the reality of what he wants, the man, when submits to the feminine and invites the chaos without him being able to handle it, without him being able to turn it into order. Shame the woman, shame the feminine. And if he has consciousness of himself, he feels that he is useless, and then he abhors himself. He develops a sense of hatred towards the creator. Why am I so useless? For Eve, we can be a bit of sympathetic because she was deceived by the best. She was deceived by the one who can deceive all. But Adam, he just believed his wife. He just believed his soulmate. How utterly simplistically understandable is the simple heart of a man, and how utterly pathetic we see is poor Adam, the first man. I was reading all about this and it made me go into a loop about how our life works, how the spiritual scriptures are not to be taken literally but metaphorically to be able to understand the verses written in them. They describe our situation so fluently, they describe the nature of humans so accurately. The symbolisms, the writings, they're so magnificent that you keep thinking more and more about them. We did discuss the reason that we feel shame, we feel guilt. That is why nakedness is such a taboo in the human world, in the human psychological mind. Because when you are naked, you are vulnerable. You will see other apes, other mammals, and excuse me, you will see every other creature on earth has a thick armor like back, and their belly is to the downward side. It is protected by their thick armor back. Humans do not have that. They are upright creatures. They stand upright, exposing their vulnerabilities to the world. That is why we dress. That is why we hide our weakness from the world. That is how we move away from judgment. So, how could a human ever love himself? You stand in front of the mirror naked, your eyes open, you look at your physical body in front of the mirror, and you see your asymmetries, you see the instabilities, you see the insecurities that you have. And how could you not judge yourself from your consciousness? The first man, by eating the forbidden fruit, gained the power to be able to see into the future. And by seeing, I do not mean literally having dreams about the future, but what I mean is he could think about the consequences. And the problem with predicting circumstances and thinking about the consequences is that you will always be preparing to remove the consequence. You will always be preparing to make the consequence less bad. So it's an infinite loop of you working and working. That is the curse the main man gained by eating the forbidden fruit. And thinking is one thing, but when you start over predicting, when you start overthinking, there is no derivation of action. You feel you get sort of your karma. There is no logic behind today's video. I keep trying to think about what is the point of me saying all of these things. There are many. In fact, if I had to summarize, as we discussed about spiritual, psychology, we discussed why we feel shame, why we judge ourselves. In fact, one other thing I would like to mention that human is the greatest sinner. Why? Look at a tiger. He eats meat, no doubt. He is a predator, no doubt. But it's not driven by consciousness. It's not driven by desire to kill someone. It's driven by hunger. What's what does it do wrong? He just does what he is intended to do in this ecosystem. He is intended to eat other animals, so he does just that. But humans have consciousness. The consciousness is what separates us from the animals. The consciousness of self, the ability to attune ourselves with our mind and emotions, and so many other things that animals cannot do to themselves. If we see ourselves naked, we know that other people can see themselves naked. If we know that our nakedness can be taken advantage of, we know that other people's nakedness can also be taken advantage of because we have the consciousness. We can empathize and we use that. We use that to inflict pain on others. The pain given by human and the pain given by a tiger are two different things. One is intentional and one is not. You cannot compare yourself to a predator who is just doing his job. You have been given the ability to think, the ability to assess what is right and what is wrong. The psychologist Freud divided the human consciousness into three major parts: the id, the superego, and the ego, which acts as the bridge between the two. And the id is the monkey brain. I want this, I want that. It's the desire. And the superego is the morality. It's the higher self. I should. I should get married. I should be truthful. I should go to the gym. I should take care of my health. And we as humans move between the two. We have our ego. I want sex, but I should get married. We are nothing but the mere bridge between and desires. These are the points we discussed today. This is what I have concluded. Till next time, and you guys have a nice day.